Hey all, FilthyRobot here, giving you an early access deep dive of the Plague Doctor. As always, the goal is to talk through the stats, skills, and specialties of the character, and then give a little summary at the end of the overall thoughts of this character. So let's get started. Plague Doctor comes in at 31 HP, which is the lowest in the game as it stands right now. It's a little bit offset by the fact that she mostly plays in rank 4 or 3, particularly 4, and rank 4 takes a lot less damage than rank 1 or 2, for example. So her HP isn't quite as noticeably low in that scenario, but it's still pretty low HP. 5 speed is on the medium to high end. The fact that there's probably a hidden D8 speed roll each round makes that a little less impactful. It's not like she was always going first prior to that, and that you reliably see her going first, but she is a little bit on the faster end. She tends to go in the front of the round some of the time, which is fine. You want your healers to be moderately fast. You want them to be faster than your other characters when your characters are on death's door, when they have that speed debuff. And at 5 speed with the negative debuff for speed on death's door, she tends to be faster than most of your characters who are at 0 HP, which is a good spot for a healer, although she's not exceptionally fast as the characters in this game go. Her resists are fairly interesting. High disease resist, high blight resist. Not a lot of benefit from high blight resist at the moment, but it's still nice to resist dot application by and large. Fairly high burn resist at 40 and medium bleed resist at 30. Very weak to stuns at 10% resist and then moves. And these are the curse of the Plague Doctor for sure. Getting yanked out of the positions where she's strong into the front positions tends to be fairly bad for her. But by and large, she's quite resistant to dots, not targeted very often in the back ranks, and has lovely things like disease resist for free. So I really like the stats on this character. They play well to the strengths of the character and don't seem to be glaring weaknesses for what they do. All right, let's walk through the skills. Starting with what I'm going to call the first attack of each character, I'm going to call the auto attack. This is for the Plague Doctor, Noxious Blast. And this is a super powerful ability, usable in 4, 3, or 2 positions. Upgraded form makes the upfront damage slightly better and the dot damage quite a bit better. If you think about it, the upgraded form is doing 3 ticks of the dot, so 6 plus 5, or 6 plus 6 plus 6, so 18 for that, plus the upfront application of 3 to 4. So we're looking at a 21 to 22 point damage skill if the full duration of that dot gets to tick out. Now, mostly in fights, you're not having enemies have all of those rounds, but versus boss fights, for example, that damage gets really, really high. The other nice part of this ability is when the companions do companion-style attacks where you get free actions, where one hero supports another hero, they use their auto attack skill, and that means the Plague Doctor, when supporting another character, applies a dot, and that dot does huge amounts of damage over time. So just a very, very powerful skill. I'm not super keen on upgrading this, going out of the way to upgrade it, although it does do good damage. The secondary portion of this, the ignoring resist when target is comboed, doesn't seem like the best utilization of combo. And my understanding is skills that don't use combo don't remove combo. So if you upgrade this will eat your combos for other characters who could potentially be using that combo debuff on the enemy. However, it is a nice damage upgrade. There's no huge negative to upgrading it. It's just I'm not going out of my way to do it. It's already a fairly powerful skill. Dots are also excellent for all the mechanics in the game. Particularly, it helps kill creatures that are on death's door. It helps you get recovery because you can make a creature guaranteed to have no turn or nearly guaranteed to have no turn because they have a lethal dot on them, but still give your characters time to act in between the Plague Doctor's cast of the dot, and then you can cast 2 recovery skills and the opponent goes and the opponent dies to the dot kind of deal. It just plays super nicely with the mechanics of the game. It's good versus bosses. The only weakness of skills like this are the resistance to blight, for example. And there are a fair number of items in the game that let you itemize around removing resistance. You can also use this combo effect if you need to. Just by and large, dots are very good in this game, and this is a particularly nice dot. It's even good if you get pulled out of position 4 into like position 2, you can still use it from that spot. Just an excellent skill all around for the Plague Doctor, and starts as their primary starting ability. All right, moving on. Blinding Gas. I'm a little less excited about this one. Double blind for 1 action is pretty nice. On average, you're going to get basically one creature removed from combat for that, which is okay for action economy, not super exciting. Big deal is that it only stacks one cast of blind, and the upgraded version is pretty bad. Don't really care about applying daze, and a 33% chance to combo isn't that much. It's okay. I just tend to find there's better uses of my skills and actions than this, but I do occasionally run this. And you will, I think the way that Darkest Dungeon 2 is headed for the length of each run and the fact you're bringing just a single group of characters, I think what you're going to see a lot of the time is you're going to see a lot of skill swapping across the course of a run. So there's going to be fights where this is very good, and especially back rank stuff, back rank stunning and back rank disabling is going to be very good. So I think you will bring this in from time to time. I just don't think you'll have it mostly equipped for most of the trash fights in the game. Moving on here with Incision. I don't like this ability very much. It's an interesting one because I think basically what you're going to be doing, again, continuing with the idea that you'll be using skills for specific fights. I think this is going to be the skill you equip and bring on the Plague Doctor when you are fighting things that are basically immune or highly resistant to Blight, and you don't have a lot of ways to enable your Blight dots. This is the only bleed on the character. It's the only ability that really wants to be in the front ranks. It's the only ability that really doesn't work well from position 4. It just seems like it's the odd man out for abilities here. Now, the ability itself is fine. It's an okay amount of upfront damage, 3 to 6, a decent sized dot, 3 upgraded to 4. It has the standard kind of dot pattern for the Plague Doctor, which is if you have a combo item on there, a combo debuff on the enemy, you have an increased chance to apply it. It's fine. It's just you're not going to run this most of the time. You're going to be specializing in Blight because you have 2 or 3 abilities that apply Blight, or at least 2 anyways, that apply Blight as opposed to 1 which applies Bleed. But you're going to situationally bring this in versus the enemies that are pretty resistant to Blight. Although, to be fair, most of the time the Plague Doctor wants to be in position 4, so you may not want this on pretty much ever, but there will be comps where you can make it work. It's just not exceptional. All right, moving on. We have Battlefield Medicine. This is what the primary skill that gives the Plague Doctor the title of healer on the side there. This is a pretty solid heal. It does all the things you want a heal to do. It has generous target acquisition, so you can heal anyone under 50. A lot of the healing skills in this game are now restricted to under 33, and pretty much nothing is over 50 for healing. So this ability is fairly generous in when you can heal. It's not a super big heal. It's only 20% upgrading to 25%. It is restricted by location, so you can only cast it in 3 and 4, but it does really nice things for a heal. It removes any dots on the target by default, and then although the tooltip doesn't really reflect this, the tooltip's wrong here. The way it starts is it removes dots on the target, and then the upgraded version removes dots on the target and dots on the Plague Doctor, which is a really nice upgrade by and large, especially versus the boss fights where they're throwing out AoE dots on you. But and it removes all the dots in the game, burn, bleed, and blight. But the tooltip's a little inaccurate there. Overall, solid ability. Can be a little bit punishing, the number of uses, so you can't heal forever, and also the positional requirements of it. But otherwise, very good. All right, moving on. Ounce of Prevention. This is probably the best skill in the game. You start with this unlocked on the Plague Doctor. The Plague Doctor starts unlocked for character progression, and this ability is just awesome. Restricted to rank 3 or 4, quite a long cooldown, 3 turns. You have to wait 3 turns before casting it again. The upgraded version a little bit less on that, but basically you cast this on 1, you cast this on 4 for your round starts. You often get 4 rounds. All the trash battles on the road are based around you finishing the fight within 5, so you can often cast this twice per fight, which is really nice, and it's just a powerful effect. The initial bleed and blight and burn percentage resist is fine, not particularly exceptionally great, but fine. The disease resist is excellent, especially in the early game where you don't want to start your run by picking up a bunch of really nasty diseases. If you're fighting corpses or anything that throws out diseases, this is just a great buff. And the upgrade is exceptional. Not only does it reduce the cooldown, it also makes it a guaranteed 1-point stress reduction for all the characters in the team, as well as 50% more blight, more dot resist, and 100% extra disease resist. And plus 30 disease resist is a lot. This ability is so good. I can't stress that enough. It also builds relationships super fast. So part of the early game goals of this game currently are you build as many positive relationships as you can. Positive relationships protect you from all sorts of things, including stress and extra damage and extra healing, etc. And this, because it is an AoE interaction with every character, just triggers a bunch of positive affinity gain, and it's just super powerful. If you're not using this ability, definitely start. It's it's almost impossible to upgrade anything else for the first mastery point because it's so good in the early game. All right, moving on. Blade Grenade. This ability is pretty solid. It has a bit of an issue that it competes pretty heavily with Magnesium Rain, which is a later unlock for the Plague Doctor. It is another blight ability, and it's a two target blight for a single action, which is good. It has basic damage on it. It's not a lot of basic damage, but it does damage on application, which means it does things like remove stacks of block, as well as you can make Death Door checks with this. So if something's at 0 HP and has Death Door, this checks the Death Door, and it still applies the dot, which is a really big part of it. The dot's not quite as powerful as Noxious Blast. It's 3 and 4 instead of 4 and 6, but it's still quite a solid ability. And if you are specializing in Blight application, this is the other Blight skill that Plague Doctor gets. It's available for the first mastery or the first shrine. So you get this at rank 1 of the story. So it's pretty easy to get this, and it's a really solid damage dealing ability. Very good if you can apply 2 of these, for example, the Act 1 boss or something like that. It's very strong for. So just a nice solid ability for the Plague Doctor. Nothing exceptional, but nothing that bad either. All right, Emboldening Vapors. This is probably the number 1 miss on the Plague Doctor. This is the worst skill on the Plague Doctor, in my opinion. It's just really bad. It can be cast from anywhere, but the effect is pretty minimal. The way to evaluate this is like this. First of all, the Plague Doctor's abilities are very high value. They have both a stress heal, a resist buff, 2 different heals, and a very high damage application. So casting this for the Plague Doctor on any given turn is already expensive because you give up very powerful skills. Additionally, the effect isn't very good. A single hero getting 150% damage buff basically is never worth the Plague Doctor's action, because the Plague Doctor already does probably more damage than most of those heroes. And additionally, this is a downgrade, right? You go from 1 full action to essentially half an action worth of value. Worse, the upgrade is pretty bad too. So even if you were equipping this and spending that skill slot and deciding this was worth it, the upgrade is still pretty weak, right? You don't get a second stack of damage, which might be interesting. You get a speed buff. The speed buff isn't that big. I think it's between 3 and 5 for speed. And this is just an underwhelming skill. I don't think there's almost ever going to be a reason to use this. Maybe memeing for big damage on characters, but by and large, it's just pretty weak all around. Moving on, Disorienting Blast. I'm not super keen on this one either. It's okay, and maybe it gets better as we understand the enemies a little bit more. At the moment, the game doesn't give you information about how the enemy skills work, so it's really hard to figure out which enemies are weaker when they've been moved out of position. So although a shuffle is kind of an interesting effect, if all the enemies got weaker, most of the time it doesn't seem to be the case that all the enemies get weaker. Most of the enemies' skills move them back to the positions where they want to be anyways, so the effect is not a long-term debuff to the enemies. And then the rest of the stuff on this just isn't very good. It's single target as opposed to group. It's a 25% chance to weaken. Weaken's a decent status effect, but a 25% chance is not a very good application rate. Daze is okay, but not exceptional. Enemies in this game tend to have less of bursting down a single enemy in a round than you did in Darkest Dungeon 1 thus far. So oftentimes enemies will act even if they're dazed, as opposed to guaranteeing that they're going to die. Daze is still okay, but it's just not amazing. The upgraded version's a little bit better. If you don't have stun combo payoffs, then this will now stun, and stun is quite a bit more interesting of a status effect, although enemies seem to be fairly inherently resistant to stun. I just don't think it's worth having on the bar most of the time. It doesn't get much better. It gets a little bit better. There's better stun payoffs. And the Plague Doctor has so many other good abilities. It's another one of these ones that's just hard by opportunity cost to justify running. Now, there might be some fights where you bring it in, and again, I think the skill system in this game is really going to shine when you're forced to cycle through skills for different fights. So we'll see if it gets better with more content. All right, moving on. Indiscriminate Science. I really like this one. I think this is a very unique ability. I think it's cool the devs are doing something a little bit outside of out of the box here. So this is a healing effect. It's a weak heal, starts at 10%. Target is under 50%, which is very good. Has no cooldown and has no use limit, so you can cast this as many times as you want across the course of the fight. And it has a very unique effect. So it eats all your positive tokens, things like guard or dodge or riposte, which in of itself isn't very good, and converts those into extra healing. That's fine. That combos nicely with a couple characters. Man-at-Arms comes to mind, where the Man-at-Arms generates a lot of status effects, and at the end of the fight, that can be a very good recovery heal. They take some damage across the course of the fight. They get under 50, which isn't that hard to do, and at the end of the fight, you throw out a single action huge heal that brings them up to full. That's really good, and at the end of the fight, you don't tend to need your positive tokens quite as much. It gets a little bit more interesting with the upgraded version too, which also removes negative tokens from a target. The upside of that is obviously that now it's not just end of the fight healing. This can be mid fight, removing some major status debuff, and then also getting a heal in. I haven't seen it be incredible for me, but it's still been pretty good, and I'm pretty excited to see all the other situations that arise where this skill can shine. I think it's just a really cool design by and large. All right, moving on, we've got Cause of Death. Not very excited about this ability. This is a win more ability in my opinion. It converts all remaining dots on a target into direct damage. The problem is dots are very good and direct damage is only okay. If enemies have Death Door, which most of the bosses do and most of the harder elite enemies do, then this doesn't even kill them. It just triggers a Death Door check and then removes the dot that would kill them on their turn, which isn't a particularly great outcome. It's got some weird extra stuff in here. The upgraded version applies combo, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to apply combo, because if you're converting all the remaining dots to kill something outright, what's the point of applying combo? And if you weren't going to kill it outright, why are you removing all the dots? Doesn't make any sense to me. It is a lot of damage, especially if you have a lot of AoE dots. So perhaps this is like a boss killer. Maybe this comes in versus some particularly large bosses that get multiple applications of dots on them, and then you use this to shorten the fight massively by not having to wait each turn for these dots. But I haven't found it to be useful. I've just found it to be a win more every time I've used it. So maybe this will be specifically useful in some small subset of circumstances, but to me, it's just been really, really win more as opposed to particularly strong. And the Plague Doctor has so many other good abilities. It's hard to want to equip this. All right. Finally, we've got Magnesium Rain. This one reads as incredible. It's, again, another back rank nuke. It hits all enemy targets and applies a 2-point burn that upgrades to a 3-point burn. 3-point burn is pretty reasonable. It's not a blight, so you have to itemize differently, but there are items in the game that give you application chance for all 3 dots, so you can get bleed, blight, and burn application chance in one item, which makes this a lot more playable. All target burn is really good. There's a number of fights already in the game where this is excellent, and the clear corpse ability is quite useful. The cooldown on it makes it a little hard sometimes for that. You don't get to cast this every turn, it's every other turn. So sometimes it's not up when you need to clear the corpses, especially if you open a fight with it, which tends to be how you want to use dots in general, is you open a fight with the dots. And no upfront application really matters, because whereas something like, let's take a look at, for example, like Noxious Blast, right? Noxious Blast does 2 to 3 damage or 3 to 4 upgraded, and then has a dot of 6 or 4 depending, which means that you get 6 damage up front a lot of the times on the low end, and you might get up to 10 on a single cast of that. You're only ever getting 3 damage up front on Magnesium Rain, so it's a lot slower to take effect for its utility. It's still very good, but it isn't quite as good as it reads because of that lack of upfront damage. It also doesn't remove things like block, doesn't remove, if a creature's on Death's Door, it doesn't check against Death's Door, so it doesn't guarantee a kill or force a check to potentially kill a unit there. But it's still very good. Quite like that overall. All right, so talked about the skills of the Plague Doctor. Overall, I think it's the best position 4 character in the game currently. It's probably the only character that loves to be in position 4. A lot of characters are okay in 4, but like to be in 3. Plague Doctor's quite happy. Almost all their best skills are available in position 4. Really flexible character, good resists. The HP isn't quite as noticeably bad in rank 4. Rank 4 takes a lot less damage than rank 1 or rank 2. So oftentimes a lower HP character is much safer in that position. The way the game does healing gives you healing over time as you move down corridors, essentially. I guess they're roads now. As you move on roads, you get small AoE healing. Is pretty good for this, which means if you're not getting targeted a lot, your HP often naturally recovers on these roads. The way that the Plague Doctor AoEs early builds a lot of relationships. Their companion attack, when they get an extra action through a relationship triggering an attack, is awesome because it applies Noxious Blast, which means it applies a very high damage single target nuke, where a lot of characters are just throwing out a kind of weak auto attack. The Plague Doctor's auto attack applies a blight, which is incredible as well. This character's good versus bosses, where blights and dots as a whole have the chance to do their full application. A lot of times fights end before the dot does all of its damage, but versus bosses you often can. They have a ton of different utility skills: stress healing, regular healing, token removal, corpse removal, blind application, stun. Like, it's just this character is just awesome, super, super good by and large. And to like icing on the cake for this character, you start with this character unlocked, so you don't have to have any meta progression to get the character unlocked. And the starting skills on this character are excellent, so you can focus on unlocking better skills on other characters and still have this character be a contributor to the team without having to unlock any of their skills, because their starting skills are so good. Just all around, Plague Doctor, super, super strong. If you're not playing the Plague Doctor, I strongly recommend you take a look at her skill set and try incorporating her into your comps. And hopefully we'll see lots of fun content where we can try these other more situational skills up here for the Plague Doctor. Anyways, hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon.